I almost didn't do this video because this morning the upstairs neighbours tried to basically slam doors. Basically, they were just copying everything that I was doing in order to try to get a reaction out of me. And I knew that if they got a reaction out of me, that, you know, that what they were hoping for was for me to make a video, because if I make a video, that means I care about them and what they do. Honestly, I still couldn't give two shits about them. I'm sorry. Like doing all this is not going to make me care about them. It's not going to make me like them anymore. It's not going to humble me into stopping hating them. It's not going to do any of that. One thing that I almost didn't do was I almost didn't do this video because I didn't want to give anybody the satisfaction of feeling like they could just flip on a switch and I would rant on camera. I didn't want them thinking that. I didn't want them thinking that, you know, that this was a game and that they were winning. Okay, this is not a game. This is somebody's life that you're messing with. Okay, somebody's mental health that you're messing with. It's not a game. Okay, at the same time, I have to prioritize myself and my mental health, which is why I'm actually making this video. I'm making this video not because of them, but in spite of them, honestly. Like, I'm making this video in spite of the people harassing me, not because of them. And the truth of the matter is that when all that happened this morning, I kind of went into this whole, this thing I've done since I was a kid. I went into maladaptive daydreaming. I nearly talked out loud to myself. I nearly did. It's been something that I've done since I was young. When things get too much or I get depressed or anything like that, I retreat into myself so far that I go into like my own mind and I kind of stay there and I kind of like sort of dream up alternate realities where I am not here but I'm somewhere else. I think that's a testament to two things. One is how bad my depression is, and two, how bad the abuse has gotten and how constant it is. Okay? And the reason why I came online to talk and to make a video diary entry number one, even though I've been treating my social media like a fucking diary anyway, the reason why I came on here is to kind of release that from myself, to kind of get that from myself, to get it out of myself so that I can get on with the rest of my day and actually do the things that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be working on this business plan. I'm supposed to be like, you know, just focusing on where I want my life to be. I'm about to move out of here in 2 months. And then on top of that, I've got a new business venture that I want to set up. So it's like I'm trying to think about those things. And I realize I can't think about that when the only emotion I'm feeling is hatred and frustration. Like, I can't do that if I don't speak my piece and speak what's in my heart. If I don't do that, then it's just going to lead to more maladaptive daydreaming. I'm not even going to have the courage to go out, the courage to do what I need to do, like to travel and to meet different people. If I don't get this stuff out of me, then I can't do what I'm supposed to do. It's a very important part of my mental health and my growth. And I'm sure anybody who's watching this video who has had mental health issues to begin with, they will understand what I'm talking about. You've got to get the shit out of you. You've got to get it out of you. If you're not getting it out of you in some way, shape or another, then you're kind of keeping it locked inside you. Next thing you know, that emotional repression, it turns into physical problems. I used to think that it was just, you know, my family had this thing about buttoning up and cheering up and moving through it. What I'm grateful for is like my dad's side of family that don't just laugh off everything. If they need to talk about something, then they'll just fucking talk about it. Like, they're not gonna button up and, you know, and keep everything locked inside. And I never used to appreciate that, but now I appreciate it. You cannot bottle your shit up. If you do, like the amount of times I've sat here with heart palpitations and with fucking like headaches and shit like that, basically repressing everything that I was feeling about the way I've been gang stalked and the way I've been abused and the way I've been harassed, I know that had to fuck up my health. I know it had to fuck up my health physically. I know it did. So, like, forget what anybody else thinks about, you know, what kind of victories they've got over me just because I'm talking about this shit. The way that I see it, success and defeat, bitch. If people want me to rant, I'll rant. It's fine. At least I'm actually getting it out of me rather than fucking holding it in and repressing it and letting it fester. You know, you got people out here dying of strokes and heart attacks at young fucking ages, not only because of the electronic weaponry or the radiation, but also because of the fucking repression, the emotional repression, this sort of, oh, I'm not bothered, I'm all right. I'm like, nah. The whole reason why I'm able to detach to begin with is because I talk about my feelings. Because once I get it out there, it's out there. I don't have to hide anymore. I don't have to pretend to be something that I'm not. I thank the gang stalkers for giving me that opportunity, but seeing as that wasn't their intention, and I'm more intelligent than they are, they don't get no credit. They don't get credit. Not from me. Okay? I've got so much to sort out. I've got to move. I've got to, you know, and don't get me wrong, like, on some real shit, I kind of brought that on myself. I didn't have to, like, I don't know. But once harassment gets to a certain point, you have to do what you have to do. You know, you have to make certain choices. And as tired as I am of moving all the time, if I make a choice about something, I've got to see that through. Because at the end of the day, if I'm being harassed and that's having a bad effect on my mental health, I've got to see that through. I've got to see that through. Do you understand what I mean? So it's, you know, I've got that to sort out. And then I'm getting my business up and running. And honestly, me being homeless ain't going to change shit. It really isn't. Because if I have my mind set on something, then my mind is set on something. And no amount of fucking homelessness or not is going to fucking stop me from doing what I need to do. It's not going to stop me. So, yeah, I've got all this stuff to think about. Like, the last thing I want to be thinking about when I get up in the morning is some dickhead trying to get a rise out of me. That's the last thing that I need. I don't need that carrying that around in my heart all day. I don't need that. So I'd rather just talk about it. You know, I'd rather just talk about it. And, oh yeah, I went to see House of Gucci, I think, 2 days ago. It was Thursday that I went to see it. And it was all right. I mean, I told someone else that I loved it, but that's not quite accurate. It was okay. It was an okay film. The cinematography was gorgeous because of course it is. The costuming was beautiful because of course it is. Adam Driver, oh, fucking hell. Oof. Let me tell you something right now, okay? Adam Driver, House of Gucci is his film. He is the movie. And no, it's not even his film. He is the fucking movie. If every single performance in that movie was as passionate as what he was bringing to the table, and remember, you got Jeremy Irons and Al Pacino and Jared Leto. You got some, like, you know, and Salma Hayek. You got some proper actors in there. When you are amongst legends like that, and you're still able to steal the movie, like, my guy, come on. And you weren't even playing somebody loud or intense. You were playing somebody, like, quiet and cowardly and you know, meek. Like, you were playing that type of character, and and you were basically filming amongst legends in that movie, and you still stole the shit. My guy, come on. You still stole that movie. That was Adam Driver's movie. Fuck that. Fuck all that. That was his movie. I maintain that 100%. That was his fucking movie. I don't care what anybody says. Okay? Lady Gaga, on the other hand, everybody says how incredible she is, but the thing is, Lady Gaga as a performer, she's not an actress. Don't get me wrong. She performs extremely well, whatever situation you put her in. You could put her in a music video, you could put her on stage, you could put her in a movie or in a TV show. One thing is for sure, she is going to perform well. She's going to put everything into it. She's going to give it 100%. That is one thing that you can say about her. But she disappears on screen. It sounds really harsh to say, but like, she disappears on screen. Even Jeremy Irons, he's a phenomenal actor. No, Adam Driver just spoiled it for everyone. He just spoiled it for everyone by just being so fucking phenomenal. He spoiled it. Spoiled it for everybody. And it's like, and Jared Leto. Oh, fuck. Jared Leto in the movie. Fucking hell. You talk about exhausting, okay? I was, at first, when Jared Leto came on screen, I thought it was funny at first, but then after a while, his performances started to get exhausting for me. And Paolo Gucci, considering the way Paolo Gucci died and everything, and, I just feel like there are ways to show that a character is an idiot without making them into a buffoon. And I find it it's almost sick in a way how the one person who supposedly died in poverty was the one who was the most lampooned by the actor and his performance. The makeup was incredible. It didn't look fake. It didn't look cartoonish, like nothing like that. But it just left a rotten taste in the mouth that the person who died in poverty and the person who basically lost everything was the most lampooned. It just didn't sit right with me. And Jared Leto just does the most. He just does the absolute most. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's like he does everything performance-wise to get a reaction out of people. And it just feels like I'm over it. I don't need, it's one thing to provoke a reaction, and it's another thing to become one with what you're doing. And again, when Adam Driver is on that fucking screen, there is no separation between who that man is and what he does. That's incredible. You see that level of passion. It gets to a certain point where, you see what somebody does. You see their profession or you see their talent, and at a certain time, it becomes who they are. And that is not only intensely attractive, but it's enthralling, it's engaging, and it's a rarity to see somebody become fully merged with what they do, because there's no separation between that and who they are, and I love it. He's a professional. All of them are. Even Jared Leto. Jared Leto's a professional. Like, none of these people are amateurs, but it's just that I feel like Jared Leto, he's a trickster, and I think there's a place it's not even in Hollywood, there's a place in art for the trickster. There's a place in art for people who press people's buttons, but I feel like Jared Leto's style of acting, it suits more indie stuff, because indie stuff, the budget's not that great, but, indie stuff normally takes more risks. And I think Jared Leto, with his performance, He's the type of dude that, you know, he can take risks and you know, I think that's where he's better suited. He's not suited to something like this. House of Gucci could have been, you know, it could have been fun, it could have been schlocky, sort of B movie type stuff, like shot really well, because that's what Ridley Scott's good at. He's good at doing B movies, like really expensive B movies. That's what he's really good at. But I feel like Jared Leto just dragged it down, and then considering that there's real life people involved in it, and that Paolo Gucci did not behave even remotely like that in real life, like, it's just, you know, at first I thought the Gucci family were just whining, but now I understand where they're coming from. It's insulting. And we have to consider as well that, now don't take my word for this exactly, but if I'm not, unless I'm mistaken, right? Her husband, Salma Hayek's husband, Francois Pinault. I'm sorry. Maybe that's not his name. I don't know. I think it's Francois Pinault. He owns Louis Vuitton. He also owns Gucci, if I'm not mistaken. He's one of the owners of Gucci, if not the owner of Gucci. So when you look at it from the perspective of who owns Gucci, you realize that the Guccis themselves were never going to be represented like human beings. You realize they were never going to be represented with the complexity that they really deserved. I don't know who the Guccis were in real life, but my thing is this, right? If you're the company who's invested in Gucci and you're telling a story about Gucci, of course you're going to make yourselves look more favorable as favorable as possible. Down to Investcorp, apparently it's Arab. I hate it when they say shit like that. Oh, they're Arab. Like, what part is he actually Arabic? Is he actually from Saudi Arabia? Is he actually from, like, sorry, I'm getting off track. So even with Investcorp, instead of, I actually appreciated this. Instead of having like this, you know, the stereotypical, like, you know, image or, you know, somebody coming in with like a, you know, a sultan looking type person coming in. I'm sorry to be offensive. I don't mean to be, you know, dressed in, you know, their usual traditional garb and stuff like that. Instead, they have this sort of like, this dude like literally looks like a big teddy bear. Like he literally looks like a big teddy bear. He's like, he's fluffy and he's got these big puppy dog eyes, and you know, he talks about Gucci like he's in love with the fashion and understands the fashion. Like, the investors are made to look very favorable, very human, very respectful, almost afraid of Gucci in a way, like, and Gucci are just represented as these like lecherous, greedy, overly heated, stupid, like it just felt that it was kind of a slam against Gucci, and trying to justify through the portrayal of its characters why Gucci was eventually taken over, and why no living member of Gucci has it any longer. It just feels like it was a vehicle to further demonize the Gucci name, down to painting Patricia Reggiani as more sympathetic than she actually is. In the movie, she's represented as a woman who thinks she wants money, thinks she wants power, and then when she gets it, she realizes she didn't actually want that at all, but that she wanted love, and she fell in love with a man who ultimately turned out to be more greedy than she was, more elitist than she was, and even more manipulative and abusive than she was. Even Patricia Reggiani, who Lady Gaga herself said seemed to have an obsession with being famous, here they represented Patricia Reggiani as a woman in love, who on appearances wanted the Gucci name for status, but when, really she was in love with Maurizio. That's how she was represented in the movie. Yeah, so I think it was a slam against the Gucci family. Honestly, I think it was, but I loved Adam Driver in it. Oh, I never used to get it. I never used to get it. I never used to think like what is going on? Like why did these women go so crazy over him? And when I saw his acting, I got it. I got it. I got it. It wasn't his looks. I'm not saying he's not a good looking dude, but for me, it's not his looks, it's his acting. His acting just bellissimo. His acting is just incredible. Oh, that man. I can't wait to see any of his next movies. But anyway, yeah, that was my thought on the movie. One thing I will say is that when after I left the theatre, basically whirling around in my mind all the mistakes that were made in that movie. I mean, it's Ridley Scott, so the messages that he was bringing home about finances and how to handle them and how to handle a big brand, and like it was about as subtle as a sledgehammer. It's fucking Ridley Scott, okay? It was about as subtle as a sledgehammer, but I will tell you that I left that theatre feeling decidedly impoverished. I left that theatre. I saw McDonald's right there, and I'm thinking, I don't want McDonald's. I was looking my nose down at everything. Like internally, I was lovely to everybody. I was polite to everybody. But internally, the food that I was eating, I was looking down at the food that I was eating. I came home. No. I'm skipping a part. So I went to McDonald's, ate, with my nose turned up like this, right? Like fucking. Ate with absolute disgust. Went on the bus. I had a salad in McDonald's. It was fucking gross. Chlorinated as fuck. Ugh. But anyway, yeah. Went on the bus and I heard these kids talking, these college kids talking. And they were talking about how there are people in Brighton who own like 6-story flats, like 6-story buildings all to themselves. How there are private kids who have buildings all to themselves and they leave the heating on and the lights on all night. And I talked to this kid and I said, wait a second, like, you sound like you know a lot of rich people. How the fuck did you... I'm like, he's a kid, right? I shouldn't be like talking to a college kid. But it was just so fascinating. It was like, hang on a second. So you know somebody in Brighton who owns like a 6-story building? It's like, yeah, like... And then he, on top of that, he knew somebody whose father was the second richest person in Korea. And I'm sitting there thinking, the fuck? How rich does somebody have to be the second richest person in Korea? Does everybody know how expensive that shit is over there? Like, yo, if you're the second richest person in Korea, fuck the second richest person in the UK. If you're the second richest person in Korea, you are making bank, bro. Bank. Okay? And as it turns out, the kid was studying economics because I think I said something along the lines of, when I was growing up, what people learned in school was really abstract. The neighbours are fucking kicking off about some nonsense now. Okay, so basically, I talked about the fact that learning in school was very abstract and they don't actually teach children what they need to know. Oh, I don't know. I think I was talking straight out of Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I said what I said. But at the end of the day, right, I said that learning in school for children is very abstract. They don't learn things that can actually help them. Now, back in my dad's day, unless I'm mistaken, they used to have home economics, cooking. They used to be able to, they taught people how to take care of children. They taught woodshop. They taught driving. And those are good skills. But also, I think what children needed to learn and what children need to learn are about taxes, finance. The lack of financial education is what keeps the wealth gap so wide. I can't remember his name. I think it's Robert Kiyosaki or something. But I think that's his name. I think that's his name. I've been reading his books. I can't remember his name. I think it's Robert Kiyosaki that said, is it Robert Kiyosaki? I have to look it up. I think that's his name. But Rich Dad Poor Dad said that financial education is the main reason why there is such a wide gap between the haves and have-nots. And after observing everything around me, I'm starting to realize that's the case. Some of the most intelligent and capable and driven children come from poor backgrounds. And that's the fucking truth. Some of the most creative people who know how to make a pound out of a penny. Some of those people, a lot of those people, the brightest stars in the galaxy are usually ones from poor backgrounds. Let's keep it a buck. Let's call a spade, all right? Usually the brightest and the most capable people are poorer children, but because they're not taught the financial education, remember this financial illiteracy is carried down from generation to generation. Because they are not taught financial literacy, there's this wide gap between the haves and have-nots now. And I think we're in the roaring 20s, okay? We're in the roaring 20s. We're at a time where diversity is cool and children are learning about financial literacy from poor backgrounds. Children from poor backgrounds are learning financial literacy. We're at a time now where, everybody's, not accepted, but everybody is celebrated. We're at a time where women are starting to find their footing in terms of wealth and acquiring things. So I feel like next decade, that's going to change. There's going to be a decided shift away from that. You're already seeing signs of that in trends, in culture. In the 2030s, there's going to be a shift away from that. The whole world is going to be reset. And things are going to go back to being very archaic again. I can see it already. You've got these kids climbing out of poverty by educating themselves. That's going to change. That's going to change because the whole world is going to be reset. You can't have like the other out here basically climbing up the ladder and getting somewhere. Something has to give. And I feel like in the next 10 years or so, things are really, really going to change. There's going to be a reset. I feel like there's going to be a massive depression. And I feel that when that depression hits, that's when COVID regulations are going to get more oppressive, because in the first place, the COVID regulations that are put in place have already caused shortages in fuel and food, and it's already pretty fucking bad. But I feel like it will get worse, like in the 2030s. And then when that happens, the rules that we already have will become even more oppressive. I think people are going to start disappearing in vans. They are already, according to somebody that I know, a trusted source of mine. Apparently, people are already disappearing in vans. It's normally, it's the elderly at this point, because nobody really cares about the elderly. I'm sorry to say it, but it's the truth. Like, people don't give two fucks about the elderly. If we did, things wouldn't be the way they are. Okay? We don't care about our elderly nearly enough. That's the truth. So we've already got like a trend that's moving towards like a glimpse of the future, and it's not looking good for a lot of people. But going back to what I was saying before about financial literacy, financial illiteracy is what is keeping the have and had nots, that gap getting wider, That's what's keeping the gap getting wider. What I'm about to say next is going to infuriate, and I mean fucking infuriate people. What I'm about to say next is going to infuriate everybody, okay? As much as there is a gap between the haves and have-nots, I really and truly feel that without wealthy people, many of us wouldn't have what we have. And I know it sounds awful to say, because you have to remember, wealth is built on a legacy of enslavement, of annexing people's resources, of elitism, of exclusivity, of all the things that are just morally bankrupt about our society. That is what wealth is built upon. But at the same time, I can't help but wonder, if we didn't have people who were as rich as they were, would I be able to have my benefits? Would everybody around, would I be able to stay? My country is very, very privileged. My country is very, very privileged. Would I be, I'm a black woman going through racism in this country, yes. But if I was not in this country, would I have everything that I have? Would I have my heating? Would I have my bed? Would I have my sofa? Would I have my flat? Would I have any of these things? And I'm literally, I'm, in terms of development, I'm slower than everyone else. I'm sure if I was living in another country, or in another country that didn't have everything as good as I have it here, I don't think I would survive. Either I don't think I would survive, or I wouldn't make it very far, because developmentally, I'm actually very slow. I might be very intelligent, soak things up like a sponge, but developmentally, I'm very slow. Everything about me is slow. So how would I function in a country that wasn't privileged? How would I do in a country that wasn't privileged? And at the end of the day, all of this happened not in spite of colonialism, but fucking because of it. That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is about to fucking rile people. Even to say it myself makes me sick to my stomach. It really does make me sick to my stomach. The thought that so many people who looks like me suffered and died just to have the little that I have in this country, the relative little that I have in this country. The fact that so many poor people had to die in their billions just for the rest of us to have that convenience. The suffering that our ancestors had to go through just for us to have this little bit of convenience. Colonialism is no joke. People were mutilated, raped, killed. All of that accumulation. All of that accumulation so that we can have the relative comforts that we have in a relatively privileged country. That's a hard pill to swallow. And I know all this talk about trickle-down economics and how it doesn't work. I think people are right when they say that. To a certain extent, it doesn't work. I feel like a lot of rich people like to exaggerate. I think some rich people are very delusional about the contribution they make to this world. I think they like to exaggerate a lot. But just because they exaggerate their contributions, it doesn't mean they didn't make any. You have to remember what it takes to be rich. In order to be rich, you can't hoard all that money to yourself. You have to put it into charities. You have to give back. You have to give back something. And I honestly think that if those people didn't give back at least something, they wouldn't have as much money as they have. And that's a horrible part about all of this. You don't just get rich by hoarding shit. You don't just get rich by hoarding shit. And at a certain point, you have to give a certain amount of your money back. You have to give it back through tips, give it back through charitable work, give it back through philanthropy, give it back through community initiatives, all that type of stuff. You've got to give back that money because, you get what you give, and you accumulating all the shit that you accumulated, dishonestly, without regard for anybody's emotions, even though you got it illegitimately and through fucking people over. I can't believe what I'm about to say. I cannot believe what I'm about to say. But I think there's a difference between risking your life to help a handful of people and risking your soul to help millions. I don't think these rich people have anybody else in mind but themselves. Please don't get me wrong, but I do think that there's a difference between making it look like you're doing good and actually doing good in the world. And doing good in the world, it doesn't look like how we think it looks. And again, it makes me feel sick to say, because I say everything that I say well aware of how wealth is attained. Great wealth is attained. I say everything that I say knowing how great wealth is attained. And it's not attained through good deeds. Behind every great fortune is a great crime. It doesn't matter what anybody tells you. At the same time, I can't help but wonder, would we have the shit that we had without industry? Of course not. It's not just about people who are willing to work and who are willing to do shit. You know, well, you know, if you know, you can work until all the hours God sends. If you don't know what the fuck you're doing, and you don't have a plan, and you don't have structure, and you don't have any of these things, then how are you going to know what to build? The people at the ground, the workers, the builders, the plumbers, they make ideas a reality. They make ideas a reality. Architects think up the ideas. But guess who's funding the ideas? Guess who's funding it? And these ideas need funding. They need resources. They need... I've always, I maintain that economics, trade is everything. Trade is everything. Even when you're doing spiritual work, you're making a trade. Every single action that you take, you're trading one thing with another thing. Trade is life. You don't get anything in this life for free. You have to trade it with something. And, you know, that's how this world is built. That's how life is built. It's built on an exchange. Even spirit, who gives us 3 times more than we ask for, or 3 times more than we expect. In return, spirit wants our worries. They want our concerns. They want our negative feelings. They want us to hand our negative feelings over to them, even when we feel like carrying it ourselves in order to deal with it. There's a trade-off. There's a trade that has to be made. You're doing spiritual work. You're doing like any type of ritualism. Even praying. You pray, even if you pray selflessly. You pray selflessly, please spare this person's life. What are you prepared to give spirit in return for what you're praying for? These things are trade. And it's always the person with the resources who decides whether your idea is worth bringing to fruition. Everything is trade. All the things that we have now, this flat that I'm living in, I don't want to live here. But trade made this a reality, made everything a reality. So this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say I think that without the haves, I think we'd all be equal, yes, but I think it would be... I don't know, man. I think we ultimately have to think, if we didn't have the haves, if the haves disappeared, if we ate them all, how would we live? How would we live? And what are we willing to sacrifice in order for them not to be there? Because we're going to have to sacrifice something in order for the rich people not to be there. Something has to be given up. Something has to be given up. It can't just be a simple case of get rid of them and everything's fine. What are the solutions? What are you going to replace it with? How are you going to ensure that people who are used to a certain way of life, a certain way of comfort, can find something, how are you going to guarantee that all this heating and things that people enjoy in this country, how are you going to make sure that people can continue to enjoy it? How are you going to make sure that people are happier without these people in place? How are you going to make sure that these people are, are happier than they are now? How are you going to ensure that? How are you going to ensure that? Because it's because of like these rich people annexing resources and fucking around, like going to other people's countries and annexing shit. It's because of them that we have what we have materially. So what are you going to replace them with? Who are you going to replace them with? Because at some point, humans are going to be desperate for hierarchy. That's how humans are. That's how animals are. That's how anybody is. And people want hierarchy. So what are you going to replace it with? That's what I'm talking about when I say the haves basically form things. They form things. So what are you going to replace it with? But yeah, I came home from talking to that economist kid and fucking and between that and seeing that House of Gucci movie, I'm like, no, I'm not impressed with this. I'm not impressed with my choices. I literally looked at the food that I usually eat and I was like disgusted with myself and my life. Like, poverty. Ugh. Turn into one of those people. But yeah. It doesn't matter where you are in life, you have to sacrifice something. And it doesn't even depend on your comfort. It depends on how you feel and what you do. And those things form who you are. Your integrity decides what you sacrifice. And if you don't behave with integrity, those sacrifices are made for you. People sacrifice things anyway. It's just the difference between active and passive. You actively sacrifice something, you at least take your life into your own hands in some way. But if you passively sacrifice things, you just go for your own comfort every time. That's passively making sacrifices. That's passively having sacrifices made for you by someone else. So, yeah. Yeah, it depends. Yeah, your integrity is everything. Integrity is everything. Doesn't matter who you are. Your integrity, you behave with integrity, you take your life back in your own hands. That's what you do. You make sacrifices actively, then you behave with integrity, rather than just being an unwilling sacrifice to somebody else's vision. I don't know what my vision is. I'm not going to say it, but I know what my vision is. But anyway, I got to go. Thank you for sitting with me, listening to me rattle on about different shit. I love you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.